It's time now for the John Harris Podcast on the AirNetwork.net. Now, here's sports journalist extraordinaire, John Harris on the Air Network.
Welcome to the John Harris Podcast on AirNetwork.net. I'm John Harris, joined by NFL Draft scouting guru extraordinaire, Dave T. Thomas. Dave, how you doing?
As the draft world turns, what do we need before the draft? A little scandal of six. I am simply loving it, man, because I am telling you, I'm trying to decide right now, do I turn on ESPN? Do I turn on TMZ? One or the other. Either both of them are running the same story.
Well, we're going to turn right on to the AirNetwork.net and get it from the horse's mouth. Dave T. Thomas, who a lot of people are trying to get in touch with right now to get a lot of pertinent draft information on a lot of different players. The draft begins on Thursday, last 3 days. And Dave T., I'm just going to turn it over to you. What's going on right now today, Tuesday, 2 days before D-Day?
Breaking news.
Well, to start it out, move up on a couple of steps over here. First, the injury factor. Ramczyk and Jared Davis. A lot of teams I've been talking to are concerned about their injuries, if this is going to be a lingering problem. Same thing with Marcus Lattimore. Lattimore may be beneficial, though, because it looks like his teammates in a little bit of trouble. It's about to be released, or it's probably hitting the Internet right now. Mr. Connolly is being accused by a woman of raping her in a bathroom while he was up visiting the Cleveland Browns on April 9th. The story started breaking last night. It came out that an unknown first-round draft prospect came in for a local visit. That was so funny because the next thing I know, sports writers that I haven't heard from in about 20 decades were calling me up wondering who the guy was. I told them, hey, just play Sherlock Holmes. It was a local kid that came into Cleveland that has a Cleveland lawyer. Here's the four names that were in there. Connolly, Lattimore, Kevin King, Patrick Mahomes. Who do you think it is? Sure enough, somebody went ahead and they found out it was Connolly, and now his lawyer's doing Jackie Gleason out there, homina.
So all four of those players were visiting the Browns during that same period
during that time. So, before the accusations came out, it was the matter of going ahead and trying to figure it out. I think the lawyer tipped the hand, though, because when the lawyer came out and he started speaking about the incident and everything, and, of course, denying the whole show and having witnesses lined up, hey, if this is a true story, it's definitely going to impact the entire draft. If it is not a true story, you got a very, very tiny window to close this thing, because if not, you look at what happened to Louis Oliver years ago. You look at what happened to Tunsil last year. You turn around and stories like this come out, your draft stock's going to plummet. Look at Collins down at the Dallas Cowboys.
I'll tell you how old I am. I covered Louis Oliver in Florida. I covered him and Emmitt Smith's first game with the Gators. You're bringing back some memories, man. I remember that when that happened to Louis Oliver.
When it happened to Louis Oliver, I shed my bell bottoms for her straights.
Now, Conley, how would this? Where do you have him on your charts? How was this going to
my projection originally was he was going to be the first cornerback taken off of the board. I had as much as Tennessee telling me they were contemplating him at number 5, depending on what Jacksonville did at number 4. Now you're talking around where the kid probably, if this story is true, no one's going to touch this kid. This kid's probably going to fall into day 3. I mean, then you got Peppers. You're looking at the Peppers situation. I mean, come off it, man. Nobody believed Reuben Foster with that diluted situation, and now you're coming up with it? I tell people, don't drink the water when you get into Indianapolis then. I mean, it's probably the only case for those two. Peppers could have been a first-round draft pick. He could have been a Pittsburgh Steeler, but outside of them in Tennessee, I really don't see a system where Peppers could fit in and produce for those guys. So I think what you're going to see on Peppers is if the Steelers were interested in him in round 1, now they're not going to be. One, because there's only a limited amount of teams that are going to want the guy. And with this onus hanging over his head right now, hey, if you could get him on the cheap, go for it.
Now, was Peppers more hype anyway, as opposed to this? What's happening off the field affecting him? Is it also the fact that maybe there
Well,
just
that's
weren't
the
as
same
many
thing
teams
with
interested?
McCaffrey, John. I mean, people talk about McCaffrey, oh, he's not an every down back. It's not that point. My point with McCaffrey is how many touches you get. Oh, well, Peppers didn't make that many great plays out there. The thing is, he did a lot of small stuff that built up during the game. And the thing that I liked about him, while he may not have made big plays, he didn't let the opposition make big plays. So that's one thing that I got to look at when I look at with him.
What do you see or project as his real NFL position, Peppers?
Me, honestly, I play him in the slot. Why? Because if I'm going into run force, I can move him up and play him as a cover 2 linebacker. Me, if I'm dropping that back into the deep secondary, it ends up like I got 3 safeties sitting back there. I know I could have him handle returns for me. If I got Mr. Bill and all of a sudden a hamstring or something goes up, I know I could give this kid maybe about 5 or so touches coming out of the backfield. I could use him as a receiver if I need to. And
Wow.
An added element to him for his resume is, with those natural hands of his, if I'm a special teams coach and I got to punt the ball, I might be looking to have my punter throw that ball to a guy named Peppers.
So how interested were the Steelers, or are the Steelers interested in him?
Everybody was, how could I put it, building a statue outside of the stadium for Peppers already. Honestly, my point is that if the kid from Connecticut slides, that's the guy you want to grab. I'm scared of this strong safety class, John. Out of the top 20 guys, only 2 of them are bigger than 6'2". Out of the top 20 guys, only 4 of them weigh more than 215 pounds. Out of the top 20 guys, only 4 of them run under 4.55. That's not what I want from my strong safety. I want my strong safety to be such a nut job out on the field, I got to lock them up into a work release program at nighttime.
So we're going to get back to the Steelers in the draft, but let's go back. You mentioned the situation that happened in Cleveland. Let's go back to the Browns. There's a lot of speculation that they've decided on their quarterback. Your good friend in North Carolina, but also that Garrett's going to be the first pick. Well, just let's get your final thoughts. I know you're not high on the quarterback class. I know you're not high on Trubisky. So let's stay on that for a little bit and just see how you see that playing out in Cleveland.
Well, hopefully I talked the Giants brass off the ledge. They might be doing something stupid in round 1, and I won't discuss who the player is, but he is a quarterback. They have me assessed because they know I've been on the road throughout the last few months looking at the 2018 crop. If I had to take the 2017 quarterbacks along with the expected quarterbacks in the 2018 draft, Pat Mahomes would be my top-rated 2017 guy, and he'd only be 7th on the list. The only other 2017 quarterback that would be among my top 10 is a guy that's really not even on the top 10 among anybody else's boards. And that's a guy that I say is going to be a steal, and his name is Joshua Dobbs at Tennessee.
Yeah, I've heard about him. He's the aeronautic science guy, space guy as well. He's a very
a wild card. And John, I'm telling you right now, I don't care what people say, and I know that they got Kirk Cousins over there. Watch Jay Gruden push and get this kid in the draft. I tell you, if they get this kid in the draft, it's sayonara Kirk. Kirk will end up probably playing this year, and then they're going to tell him, listen, there's no way we're going to put $27 million in front of your face in 2018.
Well, I know we had talked about Jimmy Garoppolo a few times, possibly going to San Francisco, possibly going to Cleveland. If you had your druthers, Cleveland's got all these draft picks. Is Garoppolo a better choice, or is taking a quarterback a better choice? What are your thoughts on that? Trade for him or draft?
Neither. If I'm going to get a quarterback in this year's draft, I'm going to knock on the door with Cincinnati.
Oh, A.J. McCarron?
You got it. That's the only quarterback that I see right now that is not starting in the NFL that I would take. I would take him over any quarterback coming out in this draft itself. However, Cincinnati wants a number 1 for him, and I don't think they're going to bite in giving him a number 12 pick for McCarron. So, honestly, if I'm Cincinnati and I see those quarterbacks coming out next year, I am doing General Sherman, and I'm getting in my tank. I am tanking the season, and hey, with an ownership like that, it's probably a given they're going to tank the season anyway.
Yeah, it's not that hard, right?
And it's not going to be on purpose for them.
Well,
I think that football will see after the 2017 season that we have a martyr, and it's called Hugh Jackson.
Well, okay. So are the Browns? What are they going to do? They're going to take. They're going to obviously they're going to take the line the pass rusher number one. Trubisky's in the mix. Are they going to trade up? Or are they going to try to get into 12?
They might have to trade up, John, because the craziness out of Jetland is that Trubisky is the guy that they want. And I'm saying after you took Hackenberg and Geno Smith, I mean, how many more times are you going to go back dipping into the well and ended up with crap?
You're just not high on Mitch Trubisky. I mean, Cleveland.
No.
He's from that. He's from that area. He's from that area. So apparently, ownership really wants this kid. But you don't sell tickets by drafting a local kid, especially if you can't play.
Let me put it to you this way. If I'm his agent right now and he's drafted by a team, the first thing I'm doing is I'm calling Alpo to see if they need a sponsor.
What are you trying to say, man?
Oh, rough. The kid's a dog.
Why is he a dog? Why? You've never. I haven't been able to get you to say a positive thing about him on this show.
I am sorry. When you're a 4-star recruiting, you get into the town over there and you spend 2.5 years sitting on a bench behind a Venus de Milo of a quarterback named Marcus Williams. I mean. Yeah. All of a sudden, you get thrown in there, and if you look at film on this kid, I mean, I don't think he makes great route progression reads. I don't think that he moves well in the pocket except to the right side. He's very susceptible when he moves to the left. To me, he looks like a mechanic. To me, it's like Jared Goff all over again.
Now, you know teams, you work for NFL teams. Teams pay you a lot of money to evaluate players and rate players and give your honest opinion. What is it? What do you see? What is their fascination with him? What do you think they see? Or what do other NFL teams see in this kid to want to take him that high? You know, maybe even possibly number one overall.
If I got a $5 ball player on the table and I got a $1 quarterback, for some reason the general manager is more impressed than the dollar.
And here's the funny thing. You've got this baseball analytical guys now in Cleveland who seem to be behaving and acting and thinking the same way as everybody else. So what's so different about what they're doing and what everybody else is doing? Doesn't seem to be that much.
There's 32 teams. There's 32 different philosophies over there. But what all it comes down to at the end of December, let's see who's who in the standings. I can't see a QB in this draft exciting me. I mean, there's like 4 guys in this draft at the quarterback position that I would even put on my roster next year.
Well, let's do that. Let's play this game that a lot of people play, a lot of these networks play, a lot of radio people play. Who do you project? Who do you see right now, or what do you see coming? Maybe it's early. I know you can't evaluate a draft right now, but potentially biggest bust, biggest surprise, biggest sleeper. Do you see players
quarterback or in the draft itself?
Just overall, or if it's a quarterback, that's fine.
I mean, overall in the draft, even Ray Charles could see the best player out there is down at Louisiana State. Mm-hmm. That's Jamal Adams. I mean, anybody that ends up with this guy's got a kamikaze and a guy that's going to be out there for the next decade. I don't see him getting past Chicago. And that's the thing. Here I am. I'm sitting with number 3, and you don't hear one word peep coming out of Chicago like, hey, you want my number 3 pick? No, they know what's going on in front of them. They know Cincinnati and Carolina is trying everything they could do right now to entice San Francisco into a trade. Cleveland is trying to get the number 2 pick so they could go 1-2 and make sure that they get Trubisky. You got the Jets right now at number 6 playing Henny Youngman. Take my pick, please. You got the Pokes trying to trade up. You got Philadelphia sitting there ready to take a criminal at running back in Dalvin Cook. So what does this do? I say that after the Giants pick at number 23 till at least the middle of the second round, there is going to be a massive run on defensive backs.
Let's look at another player that's projected to go really high, top 10 in the draft, Leonard Fournette, and how much of the impact, a lot of people are trying to compare it to Ezekiel Elliott and what he did with Dallas last year. I don't know how many comparisons there are because not a lot of teams have an offensive line like Dallas, but how much of that do you think is playing in here as far as the interest? Now, supposedly now NFL teams want to draft running backs high again.
One of my former teams that brought me down south the other day, we sat down and we had that discussion because of their interest in Fournette. The scouting director turns around to me and says, I'm not going to trade my ranch off for any other guy. I says, oh, really? I says, let me show you Fournette. Let me show you the rest of this draft class. Now you want to see something? Let's go look at the 2018 draft class of running backs. There's not a running back in college football that is worth even a third-round draft pick next year.
Wow.
You got Cam Newton doing what he is doing on his own. He doesn't have a quality receiver there yet. He's got a pretty decent tight end in Greg Olsen, but he is getting on in gears. Stewart, you never know what you got in the backfield with Stewart because either he's injured or he has one great game and then he disappears for 3. Would he be worth what they are going to put on the table, of 1, 2, and 3 to move up? Yeah, I would do it because I'm looking at this draft right now, and honestly, John, after the first 4 or 5 guys, this is a 3rd, 4th round draft. That's all it is. Day 3 will make me more excited than what happens on 1 and 2.
So Fournette, you looks like you being I don't know about a perfect fit, but a good fit would be Carolina helping out that off. And Stewart, how much longer can Stewart play? And it seems like he's hurt all the time. Also, the running back. And
that's what it comes down to. Look how much the Cam had to do. Okay, they think that they rebuilt their line. I told them that they went fool's gold by giving all that money to Minnesota Viking tackle Matt Kalil. Okay, maybe they want a family reunion down there with the center, but wow, oh wow, if that's the money an offensive tackle gets right now, I'm going to make sure my grandson eats a lot of food.
You're listening to the John Harris podcast on the airnetwork.net. Our special guest, as always, is Dave T. Thomas, NFL draft guru, NFL scouting guru. Dave T., so many good stories to tell. We talked about Leonard Fournette. You mentioned McCaffrey, also potentially a top 10 pick. His father played in the NFL. Where do you see? He's been an interesting story. Where do you see him going, and where do you see his value in the NFL?
Even with the signing of Adrian Peterson, I see Sean Payton trying to make a full intent of moving up in the draft to get McCaffrey. McCaffrey's the consolation prize. Whoever doesn't get Fournette ends up with McCaffrey. If the trade doesn't go through with San Francisco, there is no way that Tommy Coughlin's going to let Fournette get past Jacksonville. So that leaves Cincinnati and Carolina with the 8th and 9th pick coming up, and both of them are desperately in need of a running back. I see McCaffrey ending up going there. Even with Peterson signing with the Saints this morning, I still know that Peyton just covets having a guy like McCaffrey and what he could do. McCaffrey could be what Reggie Bush was not.
Okay. So he's not an every down type back, but he can do a lot of different things. He can carry the ball. He can catch the ball.
I could give him 20, 25 touches in a variety of ways, John. And like I say, all I'm looking is to move the chains, not how you do it.
Okay. Now, Dave T., talk about what you're going to be doing this week at the draft. You told me I'll let you tell the listeners so they really get a perspective of where you're coming from and how you're going to really be involved in this draft this week.
Well, I'm going to be up in the war room up at Foxborough, but today is a crazy day. I'm actually going to be in 3 cities by the end of the day. Right after each round of the draft, I'm going to be doing a ton of recaps, but my major thing of going into the war room itself is round 1, round 2. Scouts sit around twiddling their thumbs. It gives me an advantage to give the scouts up there a jump start of what I've seen out there in spring drills. And let me tell you right now, John, when I show up with my spring report, anybody that lifts it off the desk is going to get a freaking hernia.
now let's talk about that right there. Now, how much does what happened in the spring, looking ahead to next year in college football, how much does that is that going to impact this year's draft?
Well, that's the reason why I'm out there. I'm out there because if you don't get the one you love this year, I'm telling them, wait till next year, you'll get the one you love again. The talent in the 2018 draft is going to be phenomenal, especially at the quarterback position. I look at the linebackers next year. It's a great crop of linebackers. The wide receivers excite me. The running backs don't. The offensive linemen don't. The defensive tackles, oh my God, probably one of the worst crops that I've seen in years. The safeties, this is another concern for me. So when a team is going long range in this draft, I don't want a team that I'm associated with telling me that curse line, which is best available athlete. No, you got to draft for need. You got to draft for the future. Any team that goes out there and uses that best available athlete line, I guarantee that GM's going to be on unemployment.
Now let's go back to Cleveland one more time. I promise we're not going to talk about the Browns anymore, but I want to, with the quarterback class, this year's class not being that good, next year's class being exemplary, they're already bad, and they're going to be bad. I mean, I guess they see it as getting a head start on developing a quarterback, but why not wait one more year and just start really stockpiling that roster with real legitimate talent as opposed to making another reach and getting a quarterback who may or may not be the answer.
They got a cachet of draft picks. What do they got, like 11 or 12 this year? And I think they got 14 for next year. And me, I'm predicting right now, the draft next year, quarterback, 1, 2, 3 in the draft. We're going to have Donald out at USC, Josh Allen at Wyoming, and then my favorite quarterback on the planet, a kid sitting down at Louisville, Mr. Jackson.
Oh, yeah, you like him.
Donald and Allen are rated ahead, but if I had the first pick in the draft, I'd take Jackson, hands down.
Very explosive. I know there was some question about can he be a quarterback? I mean, can he throw and all those things? Obviously, you already know the answer to that. You know what it is?
It goes back to that old adage that a school teacher would tell you, man, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. I would use that kid's mind and not worry about what he does with his feet, what he does with his arm, because the mind's going to control the rest of the body.
Okay, well, let's go to our favorite topic. We always, unless there's something that we're missing here, let's go to the Steelers. They pick so low in the first round, it's really hard to get a feel because so many things could happen and a player could drop there that we don't expect to drop there, but right now, where we are at this point in time, where do you see them leaning, and what are your suggestions as far as where they should go?
I'm not sold on Vince Williams as an inside linebacker. I mean, if Jared Davis slides down that far, and I'm convinced that his injury factor is not going to affect it, that'd be a perfect fit for Shazier. Me, realistically, I'm looking at what's falling out of the tree. If the Pokes don't move up, or if the Pokes don't take him where he is, if that UConn safety is sitting on the board, that's got to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Everybody has been penciling in Peppers, but I look at that route. Then I look at the help that I needed outside linebacker. To me, it's a coin toss. Do I take a big physicality type and T.J. Watt if he's there? Or if Tyus Bowser slides down, do I take the kid that I could play like New England wanted to play, Jamie Collins?
So is the safety – well, here's, I guess, the question I would have of whether or not the Steelers would take a safety in the first round. Is the safety position really heavy with talent? Would they maybe feel like they could get another talented guy later in the draft, or is it not that good so maybe they would take a safety first?
After Adams and the kid from UConn, and I'm telling you, one day I'll learn how to pronounce his name, Melopamlalu. But hey, I'm from Brooklyn, so we mispronounce everything. But outside of those two, there's not a strong safety in this draft that I like. Okay, people talk about Jones down at North Carolina State and Evans over at Texas A&M, but I look at them more as an interchangeable type of safety, and they're in the 200, 210-pound range, but I like those big boys. Give me 220 pounds and give me a guy that thinks he's a linebacker while he's got the speed of a cornerback.
So one of the reasons why when people always wonder why the Steelers take so many linebackers in the first round, and, I've always thought that one of the reasons is that they generally are going to take, for the most part, maybe the most talented player on their board. And I guess a lot of times when you're drafting later in the first round, the top skill player is gone, the top lineman is gone. So a lot of times, the best player on the team's board may be a linebacker. Where do you see the top players on teams' boards falling out around 30 where the Steelers are going to draft? Is it going to be at safety? Is it going to be at linebacker? And maybe we can look that way as far as trying to make a prediction on who they're going to draft.
Well, I think Detroit's the wild card right now because with the Reuben Foster situation, it looks like Cincinnati is backed off him. Now, does Detroit go for a middle linebacker and take him, or do they go on the outside and take Reddick? I mean, if they pop on Foster, great. If they don't pop on Foster, Foster's going to do a big slide on draft day. That's going to affect the other linebackers because all of a sudden Reddick and Watt and Bowser are going to slide down in round one. I'm not convinced that the kid from Vanderbilt, Cunningham, is a first-round draft pick. Hell, I wouldn't even put him out on the football field for me. I think he's the most overrated linebacker in this draft. But you go back and look at the state of Pennsylvania. You guys are known for your linebackers. Hell, Penn State was called Linebacker University. And look at the drafts of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look at the philosophy LeBeau was there. Blitz, 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 and blitz some more.
Before we wrap up the John Harris podcast on the airnetwork.net, let's go back. You mentioned, and because we're in that State College area, and you talked about him last week, I believe, the wide receiver from Penn State. Let's talk about him one last time, and what final words are you hearing on him, and where should we expect him to go? Godwin.
If you watch the Drew Carey show, that game show he does, I would call Godwin the yodeler. He's the guy that slowly keeps on climbing up the draft hill. I would say that he's probably now solid in the second round. You got to look at what's going on. A lot of teams are concerned about the Corey Davis situation. He says he's 80%. The doctors say no way. You got to look at what happened with Chicago a couple of years ago with Kevin White. You look at Baltimore with Brett Perryman. I think the injury factor at the wide receiver position is going to affect this draft, and it's going to cause Corey Davis to lose that top rung. Now somebody looking for a wide receiver like the Rams trying to trade up into round one might look more so for a slow-footed guy in Mike Williams. This is where Godwin comes into play. Come up Friday, I think you're going to see teams trying to trade up to get Godwin, knowing what he could bring out there on the football field. And I tell you, there's a couple of sleepers over at Penn State, Schwann and Sickles, those two defensive linemen. Day 3, I would love to see those guys coming into camp. Both of them, to me, could bring some value to the table like a Chicolo could. You know, it's just the type of school over there that you're going to find some blue-collar talent on day 3.
And my last thing before I let you go, Dave T. Thomas, the Steelers, you mentioned the Northern Illinois wide receiver. Is he still in play with the Steelers?
Oh, my God, yeah, and especially right now, I think you're hearing a couple of worried views over at Pittsburgh that the NFL is still dragging their feet on Martavius Bryant.
Really? What's happening with that?
Well, he was supposed to have an answer last week. Tick, tick, you know what I mean? And the draft's 2 days away. If I'm the Steelers right now, do I come out of the draft confident that Bryant's going to get reinstated, or am I going to end up with another Josh Jordan situation on my hands where I might not get that answer till after the draft? So can I afford to go into the season again with Sammy Coates and Darius Hayward-Bay and their dirty pictures in their hands ransoming a draft spot? I mean, did you see Coates' numbers last year? He caught 42.58% of the passes thrown to them. I got a statue. She's called Venus de Milo that's got a better hands than that dude. And Darius Bay, you know, if you ever saw that movie with Scott Bakula, the remake of Necessary Roughness, Darius Bay is that wide receiver that got the football stuck in his helmet. That's the only way he's going to catch a ball.
So now let's talk about it again. Let's go over that wide receiver just in case his name gets called up. Well, this is our last show that we're going to do before
Kenny Golladay. This is a kid that in round 3 or round 4 somebody's going to get, and they're going to have the next Brandon Marshall without the attitude problem in the locker room fiasco. He is a big, tall kid, 6'3.5", 220 pounds, and he could just do about everything. A kid out of the Chicago area, didn't get a scholarship, ended up in the Dakotas for a couple of years. In 2 years over in Northern Illinois, 199 receptions.
Wow. Well, Dave T. Thomas, you've heard it here first. The draft is coming up starting on Thursday. It's going to be 3 days. Dave T. Thomas is going to be in the thick of it. He's going to be up at Foxborough working with the Patriots. Dave T., we thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the week. We'll get back with you next week.
It's not going to be a week for me. If you hear that jingle in the background, that's another team calling in right now.
All right, we'll let you get back to work, man. Thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you next week. Keep up the good work.
John, when we go off the air, I got to talk to you.
For another edition of the John Harris Podcast. Join us again next week for John Harris exclusively on the airnetwork.net.